Welcome to the SuperStar Communicator podcast. Our aim is to ensure you speak and communicate with confidence, clarity, credibility, and impact, so that you present the best version of yourself in all business conversations. Welcome to our host, Susan Heaton-Wright.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in today. I'm, really grateful because I have on the other end of the internet, Donna McGrath, who works with lawyers to be fantastic leaders, but you will be able to tell me more about that. The reason why I've invited Donna is that she was very, very proactive in one of these last live streams. And I actively encourage anyone who is listening to leave a message or ask a question, because that helps in the conversation. But welcome, Donna.
Hi, Susan. Thank you very much for having me.
So let the audience know what you do and why you're so awesome.
Okay, well, I don't know about being awesome, but
stop it.
What I do is I actually help in-house lawyers, that's lawyers that work for big organizations, to raise their impact within that organization. I work with general counsels, head of legals, and individual lawyers as well. And I can work with them on a range of issues, which I end up coaching them on, or undertaking workshops with the teams, or helping them really strategically communicate better with their stakeholders, or build some kind of framework around that for them.
And one of the reasons why we're talking today is related to triggering, because that's one of the conversations we had. So can you explain a little bit about triggering? Then I might add something too.
Yeah, of course. I know we had a brief conversation about this before we started, Susan. So I think everybody will kind of have an idea of what triggering is, but in the context of what we're talking about, triggering actually is an event or circumstances that give rise for you to respond emotionally, physically, even you will start thinking differently about this situation and your position in the world, where it can actually be detrimental to how you engage with other people and be detrimental to your career. It can be detrimental to your health. So a trigger is something that actually triggers that response. And that's what a trigger is. It's like a triggering event.
So I get triggered whenever I hear Rees-Mogg speaking.
Okay.
I have this trigger that Yes.
Okay. And what is that trigger?
That I want him to stop speaking because he's being so patronizing.
Ah, that's interesting. So what I would always say to someone whenever they are being triggered, that usually the trigger is something external, which we say this has happened, and we usually say this has happened to me. Now, however, the actual way we respond is the actual trigger. It's how we identify that particular event, for example, Rees-Mogg speaking, and how we attribute that to what we believe that they're saying to us, and then what we believe our position is in response to that. So it all comes from an innate belief system that we hold towards a certain behavior that we see in others. So the good news with that is this is something that we can control.
Yes.
So we control that response. So whenever you feel patronized, my question back to you then, Susan, is what was your very first memory of being patronized?
Oh, there are so many within my family, which I won't go into.
Of course.
The extended family who felt they were from a different background, that sort of thing. Yes.
That's interesting, because part of triggering in the terms of leadership, if we think about in the workplace, because that's what we were talking about,
Yes.
if we have a particular belief system about what our position is within that environment and with that particular person, we then start to have certain expectations of or from what we expect from that person and from the environment that we're in. And particularly if we're talking about employee-employer relationships,
Yes.
and leadership as a whole, historically, leadership used to be viewed very, very differently. But the world is changing right now in the way that leadership is being measured. It's no longer bottom line, aggressive, outputs, outcome focused in terms of financial, commercial results. Now ESG is starting to play a massive part in leadership as the world moves on, the socio-economic environment within which we work in moves on. The whole the fact that we're all on social media right now, the world is becoming very purposeful, and people are so purposeful. I'll go off on a bit of a tangent, that they're so polarized, but
Yes.
that's a different
That's a different conversation.
different conversation. But taking that back to the workplace and understanding the triggering event, if you are an employee and you believe that it's your employer's obligation to take care of your psychological safety, which is a new thing that's come in the last 10 years, and the leader doesn't believe that that's their responsibility and thinks you're an individual, you're a grown adult, sort it out yourself. And if there's a mismatch of expectations there, that can be triggering for the employee. And equally, that can be really triggering for the leader.
Yes.
So I think one of the big things that's really, really important to manage your triggers is to really get a clear expectation, a clear and realistic view. And you have to be really wise to understand this. This is what we talked about. Wisdom is a really important leadership skill, is to understand the new environment within which leaderships are operating in right now, and what the expectation is from a workforce. And I'm not talking about your workforce, I'm talking about globally, what a workforce is looking for. And if you're not living up to that expectation of them, you are going to walk into a triggering event. So the first key thing is become aware of the environment that you're working in and how the world is shaping around that. Number one, manage your own expectations of what you believe what your job is when it comes to these things.
Now I've already had a message from Valentina. Thank you very much. Hi, Valentina. And please feel free to ask questions. Valentina says, being patronized sends me off the roof. I feel
yeah. And that Valentina, I would really, really ask you in those circumstances to really sit back and think for you. You're seeing someone's behavior, but you're not necessarily seeing their intentions. There's a great quote from Stephen Covey, and I carry this around with me since I started my personal development journey. And he says that we tend to judge other people's behavior, but we judge ourselves by our intention, which, if you think about it, is in itself causes a lot of conflict. Because if we're only looking at someone's behavior and not understanding their intention, then we're only taking like a really small part of what they're actually about. So my question back to Valentina is, okay, they might come off as patronizing, but do they really mean to be patronizing? Probably not. Do they know any better? And my question back to you is, how does it help you feeling frustrated with someone like that? How does that help you? So this is like the self-coaching that I do with my clients. And then sometimes they're like, is that really helping me? No. and they will move on.
That's so interesting. I hope that was useful, Valentina. I think I get the impression, Donna, that we are both very much in favor of self-leadership. And if I mention some of my triggers, I have post-traumatic shock disorder. Fortunately, I have it managed. Now, one of the things that I have had to do is that I have to be careful about what I watch. There are certain films, for example. I remember going to see Assassins, Sondheim piece, and at the end, all of the cast moved their guns and they faced the audience and pointed the guns. I was,
that would trigger me.
But that triggered me big time. But I know that there are certain situations that I manage so that I'm not going to have nightmares for the next few weeks as a result of that. So what are your tips there? Valentina says that it doesn't help her. I don't know if you can see her comments.
I can't see her comments. I think she's responding to my thing. I said, does it help you? And she's like, no, it doesn't.
Okay.
So there you go. It doesn't help you.
Okay.
So you can manage that.
So let's think about how we could manage these situations, rather like me not watching.
Yeah. So I do think that there is a couple of what I call mind hacks that you can have in the moment. But I'll move on to them. Fundamentally, I think the really important thing for us is to become aware of our triggers.
Yes.
And if for example, Valentina, that people who come off as patronizing, that can actually trigger you. If you know that in advance, and you can start to detect within yourself when you're being triggered, that is so key. So what I would always say is reflect back onto times where you have felt triggered. And this is a question that I do. So basically, I have a tool in the in-house lawyers leadership program, which is a program I run, which helps people like reframe. So the first thing I get them to do is reflect back onto the event, record as much as they can the thoughts, the actual sentences that are going through your head, that were going through your head. Record the emotions that comes up from that. Also kind of settle into what physical things are happening in your body, because some people's hands might get sweaty,
yes.
Some people's breathing might get shallow, their heart might race, some people's might even respond. I know a lady who responds and she becomes red across her neck. And just become aware of those things, and also start to think of how you're like behaving in response. Are you becoming a little bit clipped in your responses? Are you edgy? Are you shifting around in your seat? So if you reflect back and record those, and you keep doing that, you're starting to become aware of when you're triggered, because you're actually triggered way before you realize you're triggered. The more you realize when a trigger is happening, you can catch them.
Yes.
So that is something that I work with people on. So the short-term mind hack in the moment is this. If it's possible, ask for a break in the conversation. If it's a conversation, or if it's, for example, watching Rees-Mogg, just don't watch him. Just don't watch him, Susan. Just leave the situation. You are well within your right to leave an uncomfortable event. Realize that that's okay. That it's okay to leave. Or if you want to be really polite about it, just say, I'm just going to go and have a glass of water. I just need a bathroom break. And whenever you take that break, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can actually go for a walk, move your body around, because if we don't move, then we get stuck. And what we need to do is move those chemicals around.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told about this Wonder Woman pose last year by Amy Cuddy. Sorry, Amy's, if you know who I'm talking about, Amy Cuddy. And she says, put your hands on your hips, particularly for women, because that raises the testosterone in your body, which goes to your brain. Is that not right?
No, it isn't.
Okay,
I'm not quite sure why testosterone has been included in this.
That's what I was told, but I don't know.
I've spent quite a lot of time. I've got her book. I've seen her speak. I've looked at her research, and it was really if you have very, very close body language, according to her research, which has been disputed, you create more cortisol and stress hormones in that, and you don't feel as confident. But if you go into this very open body language, head up, yes, there is this the superwoman thing, but you should never use that in front of your clients. I mean, this is a thing. People say this, and they don't think.
I personally don't think. Personally, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah,
but maybe it's because of the kind of relationship that I have.
Yeah, but if you were, say, with a legal client, you like this, they might perceive that as being aggressive. But it's all about creating more endorphins, which are confident chemicals. And from that, so if you go for a walk and you adopt the power pose or have a walk, so you're secreting endorphins to balance the cortisol, then you're going to feel better and in a different state of mind.
In a different state. That also does create testosterone in your body as well. Yes. So what that does, because what testosterone does is it actually helps to calm your emotional response, and starts to slow down your emotional response, which allows the cortisol to come down as well, because as you'll know, Susan, the cortisol goes into our prefrontal lobe and starts to shut down parts of our body that we don't need, because we go into fear or flight. So rather than getting too technical about that,
Amy Cuddy doesn't talk about testosterone. So
she's a friend of mine, and we have had that conversation.
Yeah.
So I haven't read her book though.
It's not in her book. It's not in the research. Nothing. So this is a recent thing.
Yeah, we were on an event last year together. Anyway, long story short, that power pose can actually help you. I think that's the practical advice. Science doesn't matter. It makes you feel better. But as Susan said, read your environment, and if you don't think it's a good thing to do in front of people, just take that break and go away and do that. As Susan said, also go for a bit of a walk. And the other thing which I always ask my clients to do is to breathe, because when we breathe consciously, we again start to slow down our heart, and if we feel like our heart's beating a lot faster, we can feel like we're going into panic, even though it mightn't feel like you're having an anxiety attack or anything major, but it can just keep you like kind of like raised like that sort of. I'm raising my hands here. It's like you're kind of like up there, and your shortness of breath, and that isn't helping you. So taking deeper breaths, and you can even do that in the moment without leaving as well. And the key here is when you're conscious breathing, breathe in through your nose and hold the breath for 1 second and breathe out longer than you've breathed in for, because that slows your heart down and it triggers your parasympathetic nervous system, which you need to be clear-minded, because whenever some people that I know are triggered, they get foggy in the mind and they can't think straight. So also, if you find that there's an event that is constantly triggering you and you have to be in that event, for work purposes, or that you if you don't expose yourself to that it could impact your life in a serious way, I would say go for CBT, a cognitive behavioral therapy, because that isn't something like someone like me, like a coach, is qualified to help you with, because that's something that's more long term. And it's really, really key that you know where to go and get the right help as well. So those are the mind hacks that you can do in the moment. But long term, I would say become more aware of what triggers you. And then ask yourself this question: what am I telling myself? Or what am I believing about myself and this person or this situation which is not helping me? And write those down, because as soon as you get those out of here and onto a page or somewhere else, do a blog about it, raise your profile with it as well. Why not? I did. Then you start to look at things slightly differently.
So what happens if you are trying your best to manage a situation, but this is still continuing, that in fact the other person, the resmog of your office, is still the delivery, and in fact the intention is patronizing? What
you don't know that until you have a conversation. No. So I would say do the reframe first before you have a conversation, because you need to come in to that conversation with curiosity, understanding, kindness, and wisdom. And in order to have that, you can't come in emotionally hyped. So manage your emotion, get yourself in a good state. And the reason why I say to you is to ask yourself the question, what am I believing about this situation that isn't helping me? You write that down, because that actually probably isn't what's actually going on. And then challenge yourself and say, well, what could be the truth, or what could I tell myself which is more helpful? And what you might find out, that you might say, actually, I have never sat down and spoke to this person and made them aware. Because again, go back to the very start, it's about awareness. It's about the environment that you're in and the people that are around you, but also you're equally as responsible as they are to make them aware of something that does trigger you, because they won't know. So my advice would be, and if you feel safe, obviously, after you've done that reframe, to have that conversation directly with them. I would always coach people to have that direct conversation. But if you don't feel safe, have the conversation with someone who you feel safe with, who can have a conversation with that particular person to make them aware. Now, this isn't going to judgment. We're not telling them that they need to change who they are. We're just making them aware. So then the gift is in them to make a decision on how they take that and how they bring that into their presentation style.
So with regards starting to manage that and having a conversation, do you think that it is of value to see if other people are being triggered? Because you can quite often tell by watching other people if there's a similar response, and therefore you can have a conversation.
I think that's quite dangerous.
Do you?
Very dangerous. Because again, you can read other people, but if you come into a conversation directly with someone saying, oh, and I've observed other people, and you haven't had a conversation with those people.
Oh, no. What I meant was that you had a conversation with them, with your colleagues.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, it would be good. Yes, that would be a good idea. And even just to self-check yourself, to say, is it just me? Or is it just me? Or do you find that a problem? But if you are someone who is going around and asking, you need to be very careful about how you engage on that. because what you don't want to do in a conversation is load other people's emotions into your conversation, because that actually takes a lot of credibility away from you as an individual speaking up, and not credibility, but it takes a lot of power away from you to be able to say to Jacob Rees-Mogg, look, Jacob, I just need to let you know that I know it's probably not your intention, but that came across a little bit, those words, and be very specific, those words were quite patronizing. I don't know whether it's the tone or the words. Can I just ask you what you're thinking when you're saying those things? So we're not going in and saying that he is patronizing, because that is unfair.
Yes.
We're just pointing out something in particular that made you feel like that. And then you can ask the question, can I just ask what your thinking is around that? And he might equally say, well, I'm really annoyed because that's going on. And now you're getting to the truth.
Yes.
And obviously you have to create an environment of rapport. So you can't come in hostile. And Susan, I know you talked earlier on to me about tonality. It's like so important. So in order to change your tonality, you kind of need to change your heart and your mind towards the situation, because if you're coming in thinking you're just patronizing towards me, that is not going to help that conversation, and you're not going to get out of it what you need. It's a waste of your energy. So you really need to do that reframe and think, okay, what's going on with that person? Be curious and go in and have that conversation, because there might be something going on for that person. As long as you understand that, guess what might happen? You might think, no, they're just really passionate about that. So guess what? The next time you listen to them, you're not thinking they're patronizing me. You're thinking he's just really passionate about it.
He really cares. He really wants. Yes. He really believes in this particular project.
Yeah,
absolutely. There are so many situations that I've come across when when I've been a leader, leading particular projects within the music industry, with due respect to musicians, some people misunderstand their intentions, that they are literally passionate about the music and being the very best they can be, but it can come across, they're being a diva.
I've had that. I had that in church on Sunday. I sing in a band, and I had that, and someone said to me, "You're just being a diva," and I said, "No, I just want to get right."
Yeah. And there is, when you reframe it in that way, people begin to understand. I mean, I talk about, I do a workshop on manage your fear. Yes. And one of the things I discuss is an 18-page contract that I had to sign with Jesse Norman, the world class, the various artists I looked after when I was a student. 18-page, including do not look Miss Norman in the eyes, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And she was managing her fear and her environment. But I saw her perform, it was extraordinary. Then afterwards, talked to every single fan for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that was why she had that 18-page contract, not because she was a diva and demanding, but
she's
because
managing her own fears.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what it normally is. Whenever we look at leadership, and I'm going to just probably leave you with 3 words. No longer is leadership about being directive, about even empathy. That word is so overused and misunderstood. It does my head in. Sorry, whoever's listening and who is an empathy coach. Seriously, change the word. It's understanding and understanding other people. And I read loads of self-help books. The best self-help book that I read is the Bible. This stuff, can I swear? This shit has been written about 2,000 years ago. Why do you need to have to read it and regurgitate it? Whether you're a Christian or not, go and read Psalms. And it talks about understanding, discernment, and wisdom. And we don't talk enough about having wisdom. And Susan, it's not those old grey men sitting in the corner who's got cobwebs growing on them. It's it's about actually sitting back and actually really taking stock of the environment that you're in, the people that are around you, understanding usually people, if they behave in a particular way, they probably don't mean it. And if they do, it's coming from fear.
Do you think that, one of those things is reflecting, being quiet, not being the loudest person in the room? And you and I know that in the world that we live in, and the way that many people push forward, particularly leadership, you've got to speak like a leader. But in fact, this is bigger than that.
It's massive, so much bigger than that. And like some of the best leaders that I've experienced in the organizations that I've worked in are not the people at the top. The best leaders that I've seen in organizations are people in teams that are actually leading teams, who the actual leader, recognizes that that person's got that skill.
Yeah.
And the best leaders, as in the people at the top, realize what they're not good at, and they give that to somebody else.
Yeah. Brilliant. And a great way to nearly finish, but I want to check to see if there are any questions or comments from anybody there. Valentina, have you got another comment? Because it would be lovely if you got a question, or anybody else. Otherwise, we will finish.
Once, going twice.
So is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish, Donna?
I would just say, when you look at the subject matter here, your triggers are yours. They're not other people's. You have got the power within you to overcome them. If you start to see you as someone in this world that can make change. And if that's where you're thinking, you are your own leader. And I just want to leave on that.
Great way to finish. Thank you so much, Donna. This has been
you're welcome.
This has been such an interesting conversation. And for those people that didn't watch live, obviously you'll be able to see it. We repurpose it as a video that will go on YouTube.
Oh, brilliant.
And also as a podcast. So that will be available as a podcast as well, which is brilliant. So it means to say that we're getting to more people.
Brilliant, Susan.
How can people contact you, Donna?
So I'm here on LinkedIn. I am the Lawyers Coach. Just type in the Lawyers Coach on LinkedIn and I will pop up. And I just want to say thank you as well, Susan, for inviting me on. I know it only came off because I was like Valentina, just typing away and just trying to contribute. And so thank you for giving me the opportunity to contribute.
That's all right. So until next time, this is Susan Heaton-Wright from SuperStar Communicator. And just shout out for Maria Canar. Thank you very much. I'm really pleased you enjoyed that. So thank you very much for tuning in today. Until next time, this is the SuperStar Communicator. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for listening to the SuperStar Communicator podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to contact us at superstarcommunicator.com.